Hi guys, James West here, author of the Guardians of Light and Magus Veritas series. And today I'm going to talk about something I got into last summer, specifically making custom Funko Pop figures. Now, for anyone who isn't familiar with these are Funko Pop figures, little bobblehead looking things you can get them on Amazon or Target, or I've actually seen a decent selection of Hot Topic too. This one in particular is of Edward Elric from Fullmetal Alchemist. It's honestly one of my favorite anime. But I'm going to say right now, do not expect this level of detail from the figures I'm going to be covering in these videos. Mostly because I'm still fairly new to this and the whole model making and painting thing anyway. So there are things I just won't have a skill for. That said, there are different tips and tricks you can find online. I've actually, for instance, the little lightning bolt effects here. I have heard that some people, in order to make effects like those or like fire effects for their characters, those will actually use like a hot glue and paint over that with orange and red paint. So there are things you can do. But like I said, these are little licensed figures. You can find characters from basically everything from video games to anime to movies. I have seen there's just a whole spectrum of different franchises that have figures like this, and it's honestly enough to boggle the mind half the time. But and with that wide selection of franchises, I figured why not make some characters from my own series. And as an example, here is what figure I made of Chase Falcoon from the Guardians of Light series. One of my favorite characters. I had a lot of fun writing him. And if you've ever seen me at a costume party or convention, this is the dude I tend to dress up as. This dude. What can I say? Say white wig and black long coat. It works every time. But yeah, I've actually had a lot of fun making these. These are actually a really good way to unwind after a day of work, which is actually a big reason why I got so into them last summer. Because for the first job I really had, and boy was I exhausted after every day. So this was a good way to unwind. Also, these are actually, well, I haven't had a chance to test this out yet. I would also imagine these are pretty good for if you're a writer like me and you go to conventions. These would actually probably work really well as like window dressing for your table as well. And if you're not a writer like me, you don't go to conventions, this could honestly just be a really fun weekend and art project with the kids. So yeah, there's a few different reasons you could have for making these, but and speaking of making things, the reason I'm making this video is because since I started making these figures and posting pictures of them on Instagram and Facebook, some of my friends have been asking me how do I make them and could I show them how. So here we are. Or here we're going to be. Before we actually get into the nitty-gritty how I actually make these, I want to go over the materials I use for this. One, there is a fair amount of them to go over, and two, there are reasons why I use some materials over others, and I really want to make sure I get that across too. Especially since some of the materials I use actually go a bit against some of the other YouTube tutorials I found online, and I want to explain why I did that. So with that in mind, without further ado, let's go to the slideshow. Okay, first up is the templates I use to sketch out my figures ahead of time. This is a pretty optional step, I admit, but it is one that's never not good to go through. If for no other reason then you get to sketch out and plan what you want your figure to look like ahead of time, which really does help. Next up is an X-Acto knife. Admittedly, you don't get a lot of use out of this outside of one step that we'll probably be going over soon. But yeah, this is a good tool to have with pretty much any craft project. And these Funko Pop figures are no different. Next up is tape. Now I realize that the picture here is double stick tape, but regular or single-sided Scotch tape will work just fine as well. I mostly use tape to secure the figure I'm working on to whatever stand I'm using mostly so it doesn't fall over or anything. That's actually a problem I've had in the past. And let me just say, when you spent about 2 hours sculpting hair onto your figure, or having it topple over and flatten everything on the back, really, really annoying. So, yeah, a nice little step to have, and to make sure your figure comes out as nice and pristine as possible. Some paint brushes, because we are going to be painting our figure once we're done sculpting. Most of the time, I don't really think I've ever needed anything more than just a few small brushes just to put the paint on. We might end up using a medium brush down the line for this particular project. I got a bit of experiment and I want to try. Right, but outside that, just regular small brushes will work. You can get these at Target or pretty much any craft store, where they are really easy to find. As for paint, there are pretty much two types I use. The one on the left is SmartCraft paint. This is the cheapo paint you can get at, again, pretty much any craft store. And these are not even $1 a bottle. Personally, I really don't see much need to get much beyond the basic Crayola set. So that just colors the rainbow, brown, black, white, maybe a tan fleshy color or two if you want that. But outside of that, you don't really need much. You can just mix the paint to get whatever color you want from there. Now, the jar on the right is actually a paint I get from Target. It's a little more expensive. I think it's like $1.20 per jar. But I personally, I actually like it. This black jar in particular, I use a lot for when I'm painting on hair, because it has a nice satin finish, and it really does look good. Plus, unlike the SmartCraft paint, which usually I had to do 2 or 3 coats to get to look right, with this paint, I just do 1 coat, maybe 2, and I'm done. So, so more or less, you get what you pay for with paint, is what I'm trying to say. Let's see. Up next is the clay we'll be using. Now, I use Daz air dry modeling clay, and this is actually where I step away from a lot of the YouTube tutorials I found when I first started out. In a lot of them, they were saying, "Oh, use Sculpey or any other polymer clay." And here's the problem I have with that, and that's not really good for vinyl figures because, again, they're made of vinyl, a pretty soft material. Well, if you put them in the oven, you really run the risk of softening material, deforming it, or even melting it. It's now some makers have been able to work around that, but if you're like me, I don't think it's a risk worth taking, especially if you put in a lot of work for different details. Also, the other thing with putting vinyl in the oven is that vinyl tends to get a bit fumy when you heat it up like that. So just from a health and safety standpoint, yeah, good idea just to avoid. Now, and also with this is a pack of Daz, and this is one of the other reasons why I like using it, is that you actually get some pretty good mileage for what you pay for. This is the first pack I've used, and I think it cost me like I want to say $10, maybe $15 for the whole pack. But I'm like, this is like my 10th figure they're in, and I'm only halfway through the pack. So yeah, you get some pretty good mileage out of it for these figures. And of course, if we're going to be sculpting with clay, we're going to need some sculpting tools. Now, you can use a cut-off popsicle stick like as your putty knife or sculpting knife or whatever you want to call it. Now, if you want to use that route, go ahead. Hey, that is up to you. Me, however, I wanted to have a few different options when it came to tools I had. And so I went with this really cheap set of tools. I think I got at Michael's, I want to say like $5 max for it. It was actually what I used for a pretty good deal. Plus it also comes with a roller, which is a really, really good thing to have with these builds, and we'll see why later on. Next is some sandpaper. You definitely want to sand down your figure, or particularly the sculpted part, in order to get rid of any weird wrinkles that formed. formed in it or any fingerprints you left in it. I find that fine sandpaper actually works pretty well for that. I will say that you definitely want to do this part outside because, believe me when I say, the dust will go everywhere. You also probably want to have some medium grit sandpaper too, not for sculpting, for reasons we'll go into down the line. But basically that's just something good to have. Some matte clear coat, because to seal up the figure and make sure it lasts long. Again, and keep in mind the SmartCraft paint is pretty cheap, and you do get what you pay for. So unless you want it to be chipping off a month after you finish painting it, everything, just a good clear coat will really seal in all that paint. Now let's see, what else? Oh right, the actual figure we'll be sculpting and building off of. This is a DIY male figure that Funko Pop sells. They do have a female version, more or less the exact same thing, just slightly smaller torso and, well, it has boobs. But either way, these are actually really, really good canvases to work off of. I think they actually come like pre-primed and everything. Like other models you see if you're doing like D&D model making, I think those do a similar thing. Now if you have a particular body type in mind for a given character, and these DIY figures don't fit, that's okay. You can actually use a regular licensed version too. I would recommend something from like a fairly everyday kind of show. Like I've seen figures from The Big Bang Theory that might work for certain figures, or depending on what you're trying to build. Probably want to stay from anything too anime related, unless you're going for like a D&D build, because then it might work. But most of those have a lot of extra features put on them that really would make building some other character off of them really, really hard. But yeah, that's about it for materials. I actually think this is really, really good. This is more or less the basic materials I use. If you want to use some different materials or add different pieces, that's up to you. This is mostly what I myself use. I hope it gives you all a good starting point. Now, in my next video, I'll be talking about how I actually build my custom figures and go over some tips and tricks I've learned in that regard. All right, so until then, this is James West signing off.